Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Brando. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know I was away for a little bit, but hey, I needed a little bit of a vacation. So went up to the cottage, did a little bit of kayaking, got the worst sunburn ever, but we're doing okay. Today's video, we are going to be diving into one of the most mysterious killers that I have researched so far. Today's video is going to be about Jack the Ripper. So strap in, grab a drink, and let's get into this. So in the late 19th century in London, particularly in the Whitechapel district, was a place of stark contrast. While the West End of London boasted wealth and culture, the East End was a breeding ground for crime, poverty, and despair. Whitechapel was a prime example of urban decay, with overcrowded slums, high unemployment, and a growing immigrant population that faced discrimination and harsh living conditions. It was in this busy and chaotic environment that Jack the Ripper was able to carry out his horrid crimes. Whitechapel was home to 80,000 residents, many of whom lived in deplorable conditions. The housing was terrible, buildings were overcrowded with families, and there was almost no sanitation. Disease was widespread, and the life expectancy was shockingly low. The area was notorious for its crime, with gangs, thieves, and prostitutes fighting for survival. Prostitution was not just a common profession, but often a necessary one for women in Whitechapel. The women who became victims of Jack the Ripper were among the most vulnerable, often homeless and resorting to selling their bodies for a small income. The dark, foggy streets of Whitechapel became a hunting ground for a killer who would become one of the most notorious and mysterious figures in crime history. Jack the Ripper is mostly associated with 5 murders, often referred to as the Chronicle 5. These murders took place between August and November of 1888. The first victim being Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly. The date of her murder was August 31st, 1888, and her body was found on Bucks Row, now known as Derward Street. Polly was the first of the Chronicle 5 victims. Her body was discovered around 3:40 a.m., her throat slashed twice, and her abdomen viciously mutilated. The killer's brutality was so extreme that it even shocked the most seasoned police officers within Whitechapel. Our second of the 5 is Annie Chapman. The date of her murder was September 8th, 1888. Location, 29 Hanbury Street. Annie's body was found at dawn, laying in a backyard. Her throat had been cut and her abdomen was open, with part of her intestines placed over her shoulders. The murderer had also taken out her uterus, suggesting a gruesome level of anatomical knowledge. Our third victim was Elizabeth Stride. The date of her murder was September 30th of 1888, and her body was found in Duffield's yard. Elizabeth Stride, also known as Long Liz, was killed the same night as Catherine Eddowes. But her murder was less severe, leading to speculation that the killer was interrupted. Her throat was cut, but there were no further mutilations. Now that brings us to Catherine Eddowes, who is the 4th victim of the Chronicle 5. The date of her murder was also September 30th of 1888. Just 45 minutes after Stride's body was found, the mutilated body of Catherine was discovered in Mitre Square. The killer had slashed her face, removing her kidney, and mutilated her abdomen. Catherine's murder displayed an even greater level of brutality than the previous attacks, emphasizing the growing savagery of the Ripper. And our 5th victim being Mary Jane Kelly. The date of her murder was November 9th, 1888. Location, 13 Miller's Court. Mary Jane Kelly was the youngest of the victims, and the only one killed indoors. Her murder was the most gruesome of all. Her body was found disemboweled, her face mutilated beyond recognition, and her organs were scattered around the room. The sheer horror of the scene was unparalleled, marking it as the climax of the Ripper's killing spree. The police investigations into the Ripper murders was led by Inspector Frederick Elberlein of the Metropolitan Police. Despite the increased police presence and efforts, the investigation was hindered by several factors. The first being the lack of forensic evidence. So in 1888, forensic science was in its infancy. Police had no access to fingerprints, blood analysis, or even DNA testing. Now, the Ripper's case was the first major criminal investigation to be sensationalized by the press. Newspapers used shocking headlines and rumors to attract readers, often stretching and twisting the truth. The media frenzy not only spread fear, but it also put immense pressure on the police. The public was grappled with fear, the streets of Whitechapel virtually empty at night. Vigilante groups were formed, and false alarms and accusations were rampant. The inability of the police to catch a killer led to widespread criticism and loss of confidence within law enforcement. Over the years, many people had been named suspects, each with different chances of being the culprit. The first being John Dewitt, a lawyer and a school teacher who happened to commit suicide shortly after the last murder. His death and the timing of the murders led some to suspect that he was the Ripper. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish Jew and barber who was admitted to an asylum shortly after the murders. He was also known to have a violent dislike of women and a history of mental illness, marking him a strong suspect in the eyes of the police. Michael Ostrog, a Russian-born criminal and physician with a history of violence and mental instability. Although there was little concrete evidence against him, his background and history of deception made him a person of interest. Another suspect was George Chapman. He was a Polish immigrant who later became a notorious prisoner, convicted of murdering all 3 of his wives. Some believe his transition from violent mutilations to poisoning was plausible, although this theory remains controversial. Speaking of controversy, the next suspect was Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence. The involvement of a member of the British royal family in the Ripper murders has been subject to conspiracy theories. However, most historians consider the theory to be highly implausible and largely discredited. During the investigation, police and media received various letters, supposedly from the killer. The most famous include the following. The Dear Boss letter. This letter, received by Central News Agencies on September 27, 1888, was signed Jack the Ripper, a name that would become known worldwide. The letter contained details that were not public knowledge, leading some to believe it was genuine. However, others argue it could have been written by journalists just seeking to boost newspaper sales. The Saucy Jack postcard. Received shortly after the double murders, this postcard mentioned the killings and again was signed Jack the Ripper. It referenced details that seemed to indicate the writer was Jack the Ripper, but its authenticity remains debated. And our final letter, and probably by far the most chilling letter of all, is the From Hell letter. This letter was sent to George Lux, the head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, on October 16, 1888. It came with a small box containing half a human kidney, supposedly from Catherine Eddowes. The letter, written in a crude, almost illiterate style, claimed the Ripper had eaten half of the kidney. This letter is often considered to be the most genuine. The Jack the Ripper case remains one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in the world. The interest in the case has lasted for over a century, with numerous books, documentaries, films, and even a tour focused on it. The study of Jack the Ripper, known as Ripperology, has become a field unto itself, attracting both amateur sleuths and professional historians. Every detail of the case, from the victims' lives to the suspects' profiles, have been analyzed and reanalyzed, leading to a multitude of theories, none of which have conclusively solved the mystery. Advances in forensic science, including DNA testing, have been applied to the case in recent years. In 2014, a shawl belonging to Catherine Eddowes was tested for DNA, leading to the controversial claim that Aaron Kosminski was the Ripper. However, the testing methods and the conclusions were widely disputed. Jack the Ripper has become part of popular culture, becoming a symbol of evil and a metaphor for the dangers lurking in urban environments. His story has inspired countless works of fiction, from Sherlock Holmes stories to modern-day film and television series. The Ripper has been portrayed as everything from a demonic figure to a misunderstood anti-hero, illustrating society's persistent interest in dark and mysterious stories. Today, Jack the Ripper tours are a popular attraction in London, with guides leading visitors through the narrow streets of Whitechapel, recounting the grisly details of the murder. These tours are a testament to the enduring allure of the case, as people from around the world would walk in the footsteps of history's most notorious killer. We may never know Jack the Ripper's true identity, and that mystery might be what keeps the case so intriguing. The blend of mystery and horror and historical context creates a tale that continues to both fascinate and disturb. Jack the Ripper remains a symbol of the unknown and the unknowable, a reminder of the dark side of human nature that lurks just beneath the surface of society. Well, there you guys have it. That is the story of Jack the Ripper. I hope you learned something. I really enjoy doing these historical videos and really diving in and learning this and putting it together for you guys. You know, I definitely would love to go on the tour in London and learn even more details about this. I just find it fascinating that they still have not figured out who he was. I hope in the future, you know, through more testing and such that they're doing, that eventually they will be able to figure out who this was. You know, I know that the immediate family of these victims are no longer with us, but at least it can bring some peace to the case at the end of the day. So anyways, guys, as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys every Sunday going forward, all right? Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.